Let me just I'll focus you.
Hey, your attention, please. I'm Mike Miller, and along with Marcy Wagner, I'm one of the co-presidents of the Friends of the Westfield Library, and we'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. And this is a special night for us because we're finally able to resume our Hale Series speakers after about a 2-year hiatus. And it's a special night for us. We also are launching our new Friends YouTube channel. This is the first event that we're going to be live streaming, and we'll later be putting it up onto YouTube for viewing at everybody's convenience. You can sign on to our YouTube channel by accessing YouTube and doing a search for FWMLNJ and clicking on that, and it'll take you to our channel and all the material that we have up there. And we'd ask you all to subscribe to the channel, and you'll get notifications of new content that we post, and it will help us make it a little bit easier for us to post some of our material. So I want to thank the Union County Commissioners for issuing us a grant to purchase all this equipment over here for the we can operate a YouTube channel. We applied under the Union County Heart Grant Program, and we were successful, and they funded 80% of the material we need for this. So we want to acknowledge that and thank them and express our real appreciation. With that, Mercy, you.
Thanks, Mike. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. This is very exciting for us. Not only are we back, we're returning. I'm sure a lot of events that you go to now that are in person, you say we're back, but it feels great. We also, as the Friends, are celebrating our 50th anniversary of being in Westfield. 1972, members of the Westfield Women's College Club and also the PTO got together and decided that they wanted to do something for the library. So they started the Friends, and 50 years strong, here we are, keep going. And it's probably in part due to all of you for your support, and we greatly appreciate it. In honor of our 50th anniversary, I would like all of you to look underneath your chairs, please, and raise your hand if you find something.
Like on the bottom?
Underneath, yes.
No, yeah.
Anybody find something? Let's see. Oh no. Hope it's not gum. Oh, a star?
Star with a number 2.
Is a star with a number 2? No? Anybody? Oh!
We have a
What
winner.
did you find?
You're a winner.
You're a winner. That's right. Your star is probably from one of our children's programs. Congratulations. But in honor of our 50th anniversary, we also wanted to acknowledge another book-loving partner in our town, which is the town bookstore. So the lucky gentleman received a $50 gift certificate.
Good chair picking.
Yes. Thank you all for coming and enjoy the talk.
Barbara Hale from the Hale Speaker Series.
Thank you. So I just have to echo, like, is this exciting or what? Like, we are all here. We're in 3 dimension, no 2-dimension stuff going on. And yes, to the screen, we're 2-dimension, but in person, we're here. I'm so excited. It was actually 2 years ago that our speaker was supposed to be speaking. And literally, I think it was a week before Linnea that we needed to cancel. We made that decision, and I think it was 24 hours later, the state made it for us if we hadn't made that decision. So I am very excited to announce our speaker tonight, and it is former judge and longtime resident of Westfield, Judge John Boyle.
It's your best side, Jack.
They're all very nice people.
Where's the doctor? What are all these people doing? And they got masks. I showed you my real side just a moment ago. I didn't want to fake it. Look like I knew what I was talking about. It's good to see all of you, and it's a pleasure to come here. It's not a very nice evening. It's a little rainy and all that, but I'm so happy to be your speaker. The Hale Series.
Jack, I want to get you, I didn't do my one other job, which was to put your water here.
I didn't want water, huh?
I
You got the wrong guy.
I think it's a water bottle.
Oh, that's much more like it. But I want to see if Judge Healy is here. Is he here? There he is. He has a mask on. I didn't recognize him. He's one of the great judges here in Union County that you all have the benefit of. And where I sat for 17 years, I was a few minutes late because of the protesters outside. I don't know what they thought I was going to talk about, but I can assure you that it's all in fun. I would like to get off of the dull subject that may very well be of just the routine of being a judge. It's important work, no question. On the other hand, for a talk, it might simply be rather draggy and dull. So we're going to change that a little bit. And I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, which is dangerous, but which I think you'd see what the United States of America really is worth, and particularly right here in our town, beloved town of Westfield. I was a young man brought up as a child, imagine, in Elizabeth. And in Elizabeth, I was born into a rather wealthy family. But those of you who know your history, and those of you who are as old as I am, can remember the fact that we had what we called a depression. And it started not in 1929 when Wall Street went down, but it started, the reaction came a few years later. And so we had everything that the United States affords people who work hard and have some sort of an opportunity to build on their strengths. And in our case, my father got wiped out in the Depression. And we had to let the chauffeur go, and the governess, I started to learn Polish, by the way, because she was Polish. Interesting. But in any event, we got wiped out. And they foreclosed on the house. And we walked to an apartment. And I remember when I was on the bench, and I was handling foreclosures at that time, this man came in rather angry, and he said, "Judge, you don't know what it is to have your house foreclosed." And I turned to him and I said, "Yes, I do." And I told him about my father's experience. So things were rough then. Things were tough in the United States. God forbid that it ever comes back. But there was a wonderful mother and father that I had the privilege of having. And consequently, I had to go out and earn a living myself if I was going to have any spending money. Not that my mother cared whether I did or not, but I knew that things were tough in the house. And so I went out to find work. And my first job, honest to God. I was 14 years of age, which I think is the legal age for working. And I ended up being a dishwasher at the local Elks Club in Elizabeth, which was, I don't know whether, probably none of you have known it, but it was a magnificent building and operation. It was beautiful. But I show you how good I was. I actually got a promotion very soon after I got, and they promoted me from dishwasher to busboy. I was kind of proud of that. I said to myself, you know, there's a possibility that I might have some success in this world. And so I went from that, finished grammar school course, and I had no money. I think that's an exaggeration. I think I had about $17 in the bank. And I was talking to my brother-in-law who had been at Omaha Beach during the invasion that took place in France. And I said, you know, I want to go to college, but I said, I don't have any money. He said, join the Army. And I got the GI Bill of Rights as a result of that. And that took me not only through undergraduate, but also through almost law school, almost paid for most of my law school education. And this is a wonderful country. That's what annoys me when I hear people complain about the country. You might complain about a politician or two, but you can't complain about this country. It's one of the, if not the greatest country that has a government, and I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat. The point is that we have a wonderful, wonderful country. And we have a wonderful town that we live in. Those of us who live in Westfield, we're very, very lucky to be here. You know, today, when I came to this town, the best house you could get in this town, $70,000. I looked at a house on Kimball Circle, if those of you might know it, in Witchwood. And they wanted 90, but the broker told me, look, they'll take less. And I said, $90,000? That's unbelievable. But we know today, you're lucky to buy a garage for $90,000. And they tear houses down now and build new ones where the old ones were. So we've got a market that's highly different than it was when I was a young man. In any event, I went in the Army. And before I continue, I'd like to especially thank the Italian family for hiding me in their cellar during World War II. In fact, you can see it now. It's a couple of blocks down here near the They saved my life. And certainly, nothing happened to me when I was in Europe. It was dull. There's nothing I'm going to tell you folks, except one story, if you'll forgive me. The story is this. I took a furlough with another chap who happened to be the son of a coal miner out of Pennsylvania, tough kid, athletic and the whole works, and me, non-athlete. And we went in, it was 1948, at the Winter Olympics in St. Moritz, Switzerland. And we went as spectators. And we're sitting around talking, and these two gentlemen came up to us and said, would you like to participate? And we said, participate? What does that mean? And they said, no, we'd like you to participate. The United States has not had any entry in this particular aspect, and we're not in the thing by any means, by virtue of being an official entry. We're not, but we'd like to have a token American presence. And I said, well, what is it? And they said, well, it's the luge. I thought, frankly, they were talking about a French place to go to the bathroom. That's what I thought. So anyway, my friend, the coal miner's son, tough kid, said, well, we're more than willing to do it. I said, wait a minute, what does this consist of? He said, it's just a sled. And he said, you go down the sled and it's a single person on the sled. And I thought to myself, I remember when I was doing that in the playground in a flexible flyer. You remember that? And so I said, okay, this is simple. We get out over to the, whatever they call it, I think it was called the Cresta Run. And that's where those big what would they call them? Sleds? Well, what do they call them when you have 3 or 4 people? Okay. And I said to myself, holy mackerel, but it's okay. I can lay on my stomach and they probably have a flexible thing. Turns out that they had Swiss farmer sleds that were totally rigid. There was no flexibility whatsoever. And you laid on your back, not on your stomach, and you go down the Cresta Run. And there's a turn that's called like the Devil's, I'll make it up, I don't remember, the Devil's Pitch or something. And I, of course, being a coward, tried to lay back, but my friend, the strong coal miner guy, said, let's do it, Jack. And I said, well, you go first. He went first. And if you go up on the run, as I recall it, the higher you get on there, the faster you go. So, of course, he was fearless, and he went first. And I remember him about 30 feet in the air. He was went around the run, the Cresta Run, and disappeared. And I thought he was dead. But actually what the Swiss, they're wonderful people, they had bales of hay so that when he fell behind where we couldn't see, he wasn't injured at all. I didn't know that. And then they said, it's your turn. I said an act of contrition. And I went down. And I lasted the whole time because I was very slow. In fact, I have the world's record for being the slowest person at the Cresta Run. So that was fun. That was a little different. Other than that, my service in the Army was rather boring, and I was probably the lowest ranked American soldier in the European theater. I was a corporal, and I remembered that Napoleon was a corporal. And then I got scared to death because I remember Hitler was a corporal. It's like, oh my God. But I made it. I came back. And I went to finish my education, and I became a lawyer. And this is a true story. Someone said, well, what was your first case, and did you win or lose it? And I said, well, my first case was before I became a lawyer. So what does that mean? I said, I'll tell you the story. I was clerking for Julie Qualk, who was a prominent lawyer in Elizabeth. And Julie says, I have an appearance tomorrow before Judge so-and-so. And he said, I have a conflicting appointment. Would you go there and sit in for me and tell the judge, who I know, that I'll be there at 11 o'clock? So at 9 o'clock, I go and I go up to the judge, and I was scared to death. I said, could you do this for Mr. Qualk? Of course, no problem at all. So he said, well, who are you? I said, I'm from Mr. Qualk's office. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that he thought I was a lawyer. So at 11 o'clock, Julie never showed up. And he was getting a little impatient because I found out later he had a golf date and he was So each time he would say to me, is Mr. Qualk here yet? I said, no. I said, well, his adversary is here and we have to proceed without him. Come up to the counsel table and try the case. I said, but Judge, you don't understand. He said, look, I don't want any excuses, but Judge, you don't understand. I said, I was trying to tell him I wasn't a lawyer, and he didn't believe me, so we started the case, and I won it. So Julie comes down the street after I'm about leaving on the steps of the municipal court, and he said, what are you doing? Why aren't you sitting in for me? I said, Mr. Pollack, I said, the case is over. He said, he didn't wait for me? I said, no, he didn't. He had a golf day. He said, I'll be damned. And he said, well, when is the new trial? I said, it's over. He said, it's over? What happened? I said, I won it. I said, let's go back to the office. So I can honestly say that I won my first case before I actually got sworn in as a lawyer. Of course, I never won another case. but it was really fun. And that's why I love this country so much, because it has all crazy things. Some of us are poor, some of us are rich, who knows? But eventually, after about 30 years practicing law, I was appointed to the Superior Court by Governor Kane, a lovely family they are. And I got, also, prior to that, I had been an administrative judge part-time at the New York, New Jersey Waterfront Commission, which dealt with all of the crime on the waterfront. You've seen the movie with our friend. And as a result of that, I got involved in a lot of the organized crime matters. In fact, I gave a talk to the Historic Society here a number of years ago about, I think, the famous case I had, which involved Vito Genovese, who was the capo di capo, and who didn't believe in divorce. So when he wanted to marry a woman who was already married, and the husband wouldn't give his consent, in those days in New York, they had a consent. Vito was a very efficient guy. They took the husband up on a roof and with piano wire strangled him to death. So, he's not a bad neighbor. I mean, the guy never did anything to me, but you can see how things have changed, because today organized crime is not what it was, and hopefully never will be. So we've done that, and I wanted to tell you that I was a great lover of the Manhattan nightlife. I love the wonderful restaurants they had there. I love some of the, shall I say, bars that were there. And I love Manhattan for its excitement and so forth. But in those days, unlike the pandemic area we've just gone through, it was very difficult to get a reservation at the prominent restaurants and watering holes. Very difficult. However, if you were a celebrity, you could always get something. So I became a celebrity. And as a celebrity, all I had to do was tell them I was Senator so-and-so from Idaho. Nobody knows who the senator from Idaho is. Not even the people who live in Idaho. They have no idea. And so I used to do that all the time. And so it was one particular time. I'm in the men's room of the 21 Club. And I walked in, and there was a very nice-looking gentleman, beautifully dressed. And the attendant was sweeping off his shoulders, you know how they do that after you've done your business. And I overheard him saying to the attendant, Walter Mondale, who the heck is he? He's from Minnesota or something, and he's going to run for vice president of the United States. My God, that's the funniest thing. This guy couldn't, blow hot soup. Turned, tapped on the shoulder. I said, I'm Walter Mondale. Now, I knew I could get away with it because nobody knew who Walter Mondale was. I think his family did, but other than that, I don't think anybody really knew. So the fellow stopped brushing him off and started brushing me. Then I knew I had graduated. Now I was a celebrity. And there are many stories I could tell you, most of which are true. But I have one more for you that involved my dear wife, Jeannie, and it was this. I did mostly civil law, rarely did criminal law. But this particular time, I was assigned by the court to represent a chap who was accused of felony murder in which someone was killed in a holdup, and he was the lookout or something. He didn't personally do it, but as Judge Healy will tell you, they're equally guilty under the law. But they have to convict you first. And I get a call from the court saying, we didn't have a public defender in those days, so the court would just select somebody. Now, I was the type of guy who was closing titles and doing a lot of mundane real estate deals, which I love. And I said, Judge, I'm not the guy for this. And he said, don't worry about it. He said, this trial will be quick and over. They caught him and all this stuff. So I said, okay. And I, of course, said to myself, this poor guy is going to have a bad lawyer representing him. However, we won. And I won't go into details, but that time I said to a pal of mine, let's go into New York and celebrate. And it was a Monday night. And he was always kidding me about times when I'd see celebrities in New York. Not that I knew any of them, but I'd see them in some of these places. And so we went to New York and we hit all the spots. And we ended up, the final stop was P.J. Clark's in New York. You've all heard of it, I'm sure. And I'm sitting at the bar, and who walks by me but Frank Sinatra? So you know I could not resist that temptation. It's absolutely an addictive thing with me. It just so happened that I had a friend of mine who was a boyhood schoolmate of Frank Sinatra. So I mentioned his name as Frank was going by, and I thought he'd just give me a wave and move on. He comes over, sits down at the bar. My buddy is behind me, and he's tugging at to introduce him to Sinatra. But I told him it was Monday night. There are no celebrities out on Monday night. And so I was out rather late. I came home, and my wife was asleep, sitting up in bed, watching television, or thought she was, but she was asleep. So I took advantage of that because it was about 3 a.m. And I proceeded to get into my pajamas, and I tiptoed over. See, I shouldn't have had any drink. I tiptoed over, and as soon as I turned off the TV, she woke up. And she said, where were you? Where were you? I said, I was in New York. Oh, yeah, and who were you with? You know what I said to her? I said, I was with Frank Sinatra. She said, you know, I smell alcohol in your breath. Get in bed, you're drunk. So I did. I woke up the next morning, and she said to me, boy, you were bad last night. You came home, you must have had too much to drink. I said, what did I say? She said, you were with Frank Sinatra. I said, I was. She said, oh, stop it. I go to the office, and one of the guys had a newspaper that I never bought. And it had, on page 6, I think it was, Cindy Adams had this gossip column thing. And in there, she said, Sinatra was seen last night at P.J. Clark's on his way to fly to Las Vegas to marry Mia Farrow. Okay, she was old enough to be his daughter. I don't understand that, But in any event, those were the things what I loved Manhattan. And there are many stories I could tell you, most of which would be true. So it was now time for me to move from Elizabeth to Westfield. And I was involved in politics in Elizabeth, and I was interested in running for mayor. And my wife was so fed up with politics because I was always out at night at different times. And she said, look, it's either me or politics. So you know what I said to her. I'll take the politics. Now I want each other. That's got me out of Elizabeth, and I moved to Westfield, New Jersey. And the broker who I was dealing with was a former mayor here in Westfield. I won't mention name. And he knew my family from Elizabeth years and years ago. And I bought a house through him. And before we had the closing, he came up to me and he said, Jack, look, there's a councilman in your district, whatever they call it here. And he's a Wall Street guy, and he's tired of the night meetings, and he's going to submit his resignation. how about you become a councilman? I said, let me tell you something. I'm not moving out of Westfield. And that's what I would have had to do. Be that as it may, I think one of the funny things is that those of you who know me well know that I have had 9 children. And can you imagine the first time I pulled up in the station wagon in the driveway and the neighbors saw this congregation of bodies spilling out from this, and they said, there goes the neighbor. So I went someone invited me to a party there, and this fellow comes up to me who I didn't know, who lived in Witchwood somewhere. And he said, hi, Mr. Boyle, you're new here. He said, yeah, I want to tell you something. This neighborhood's going down. He said, there was a couple that bought a house, and there's a slew of kids. And he said, you know what that means next? This neighborhood's going down. I said, you're right. I agree with this guy. And then another fellow said to me, well, the problem with this world is that we don't discipline our children correctly. They get away with too much stuff. And he said, you're a lawyer, you must see this stuff. I said, yeah, I see it, but I didn't totally agree with him. Not that I like children, but it just said, and so I said to him, okay. And one day, about a month later, he called me on the phone. He said, I need your services. I said, what happened? He said, did you read the newspaper? I said, yes, I did. He said, that was my son. Now, this was a guy, I don't know whether he was under drugs or alcohol, whatever it was, but led a merry chase through about 4 municipalities with all the police departments after him. And he got lucky, he didn't crash into a telephone pole. But it was serious, and he had a little record here and there. So he said, would you represent him? I said, what's our defense? We have no defense. He said, well, what would you suggest we do? I said, I'll tell you what we do. It wasn't Judge Hale, but I know I would have worked on him too. I said to the judge, it was Judge McGuire, that's how far back it goes. And I knew that he was a softie where he felt there was sincerity. And so I said to our friend, pack your bags. We're going to the sentencing. And I said, you're probably going to go to jail. His father was all excited. I said, I'll tell you what, though, I have a possible out for you. I know that Judge McGuire is a great patriot. And I said, here's how we do it. We tell him that your son is going to join the Army if they let him go. But I said, if we tell him that, we have to follow through if he buys it. And I wasn't sure he was going to buy it, but I didn't know what else to say. And he bought it. And I turned to the old man. And his father was a prominent guy, we can use names. And I could just see him going down to Fort Dix and seeing his son, parading around with all the GIs. But that worked. And I think, frankly, the idea of him going in the Army and getting discipline and responsibility probably worked much better than a sentence in jail. So I'm going to tell you one last story about coming in. I don't want to bore you. But my wife said to me one day while maybe we were here 6 months or something. She said, you never go to any of the parent-teacher meetings. And she said, I don't like to go alone. All the others usually have their husbands with them. I said, I'm not a parent-teacher guy. I mean, you got picked the wrong guy. She said, well, you have to promise me you'll go to the next meeting. And the next meeting was at Wilson School. And she called me and I said, I have another appointment. I said, but I'll get there. I won't get there exactly on time, but I'll get there. And I figured I have to promise her that, and I have to fulfill the promise as well. So at about, I guess the meeting started, I'm guessing now, 7 o'clock. I got there about 7:30, and the gymnasium, those who were familiar with it, was packed with people. And I didn't know it, but my wife was at the far end of the gymnasium waiting for me with some women. And I walked in and there was a table there of some gals, maybe there were 6 of them, I don't know. And they said, "Oh, are you the new occupant of the house on such and such?" "Yes, I am." They said, "Well, oh, that's wonderful. We wanted to meet you. What do you do for a living?" I knew they were going to ask me that, and I wasn't with Chase. I wasn't with some of the great banks and so forth. I said, "Well, if you don't spread this around and you keep it quiet, I'm willing to talk to you women at the table, but on one condition, it's just between us." I said, "Oh, of course." Now they were really excited. I said, "The reason I left Elizabeth was I was the biggest bookmaker in town." And in those days, bookmakers represented not only gambling, but incentive-wise, it may very well have been part of the mafia opera. Who knows? A lot of guys denied it, but they probably were not telling the truth. In any event, so I said, "I have to find my wife." I said, it took me a few minutes to go to the far end of the gymnasium in order to find her, and I found her. And the first thing she said to me, "Oh, the biggest bookmaker in Elizabeth." I said, "Jeannie," I said, "they were supposed to keep that quiet." I knew it would spread like a disease. I knew it. And after that, nobody was talking to me for a while. And, that's one reason why I said it, because I want to be left alone. One thing I like when I'm in my house is business is secondary. I do it for my children. Not necessarily because I like them, but they're my children. I have a legal obligation. And I have to profess that it's been a great thing. I'm very fortunate that I have children that have respected me despite my background. And I love this town. I love it. My brother and I built the Westfield Motor Inn. We tore down an old dilapidated supposed hotel. My sons at the 16 Prospect, the restaurant, we've invested not only time but money into place. We found that Westfield is unique. It not only has nice people, but it's a nice town. And it even has a newspaper, which not just for Westfield, but for the area. It has a newspaper. Newspapers are pretty much gone. And yet we have that so that we get news about kids playing football, baseball, whatever the case may be. But I've taken too much time, I'm sure. And I want to give special thanks to the funding that enabled this today, the Glasser Foundation and the Ann and Lee Hall Fund. I want to thank them for inviting me. I'm asking you not to report this to the prosecutor's office because I'm too old to go to jail. So thanks for putting up with me, folks, and I appreciate it. If there's any questions you have, I'll try to answer them. If I don't know them,
this is the most fun part and why it's so great to have people here in person, is question and answer time. So please ask your questions.
Are you still making book?
see me after the show.
I'm Linnea.
Oh, are you?
Yes.
I talked to you on the phone.
Yes, and you told me when we were talking about your topic, that you not only started the motel, but that you decided to go to New York to get a good chef to start a good restaurant in town.
Yes.
Would you tell that story?
Well, I'm not sure that story is clear to me because it's not bouncing off me quickly. But I know this, that Shea Catherine ended up originally as the initial tenant. And that's my brother. My brother said, we're not going to have a pizza, but we're not going to have some second-rate restaurant go into our motor inn. And so he refused many people who wanted to be tenants. And he said, I'd rather do this. I'd rather give, and I guess I'm telling tales out of school. He said, I'd rather give a top restaurant a real bargain on the rent in order to get them. Now, maybe that lesson might very well be thought of here in Westfield, but maybe we could attract some good people. That was my brother's thinking, class. He's a class guy. And I said to him, Bill, why are you taking this kind of rent? That's not normal rent. But we're going to get a first class tenant. And they've been a tenant since we did it. You know? So we're very happy about contributing that to the town because we don't own it anymore. We sold it. And yet the town still has the advantage of a first class French restaurant. By the way, I have no interest in the restaurant, so I'm not promoting it per se. But yeah, that's my recollection of what happened. Yes, sir.
Out of your 9 children, who's the favorite?
It ain't you.
Friend.
It ain't you. You know, I wish with all the children that I had, I wish I liked children. I'm one of the few honest guys when they ask, will say, no, I don't like these kids. But I do. I just like to have some fun. We have been so fortunate. I lost my wife and I lost a daughter in Colorado. So we've had a little pain recently. But other than that, God has been good to us, and I hope to you too, because I look at this audience that comes out at night and takes their time to participate in this community. And also that the Hale folks would, Lee Hale, I think, was the one who created this series. And what a great idea it is. I mean, I'm an exception. You got some clunkers that you're going to get, but by and large, you're participating in someone who really has a community spirit, and the Glasser Foundation as well. So we've been very fortunate, all of us living in Westfield and participating in this type of talk.
If you comment, you left something out of the station wagon with all the kids' story. And I wonder if you commented. You're Irish, you're Catholic.
That was.
You came to Westfield. Do you have any sense that, hey, people are looking down their nose at you?
Well, you're talking about the time we were on the Parkway going down to our shore house. And what's the organization? Planned Parenthood. Now, in those days, we didn't have an SUV like you have today. We had a station wagon. And how do you fit all those kids in a station wagon? Well, I'll tell you how you do it. You put all the seats down, you throw a pillow in there and maybe a blanket, and you stuff them all in the back of the car. No belts, nothing safety-wise. And so we're driving down the Parkway, and this woman passes us in the car. And she had a big sign in the car, Planned Parenthood. So I said, let's have some fun. I said, kids, I want you all to get on this side of the car. And when we pass her, and I'll see to it that we do, I said, I want you to all wave. And of course, I'm sure that this lovely woman, I'm sure she's a sweetheart, went home and said, I can't believe it, they're multiplying it. Is that what you were referring to?
Westfield's majority ethnically Catholic now, but that wasn't the case in the 1940s and 50s. And people like your family and the family I came from, they were a little bit of a ragamuffin kind of like, oh, why are they having all those children? And I think I guess you showed it.
Well, you know what the strength of all of this should be? That even when the jokes are cutting, and probably some of them go too far, but I think the test of your stability as a person is to be able to absorb those jokes even though you don't like them. And I'm not talking about obscene jokes, or talking about something that's more light. And the ability to absorb it is important, because we all have to live together. We don't know who our neighbor is next door unless, you get to know them and participate with them. But a lot of times, in some of the neighborhoods, you don't know who the person is that lives on the same block with you. And why is that? I don't know. But I remember when I was a kid in Elizabeth, we used to play football out on the street. And my mother would say, be careful of the buses, People were entirely different then.
Yeah.
And does that make them better than us? No. But it's an interesting observation that there is another phase of life that we don't have anymore. I have never seen, ever, and I've lived at my address for 52 years or something. I have never seen, in that 52 years, a child playing in the street. Never. I have not seen it. It shows you how times change. Not that it's necessarily wrong. It's just that it's different. And I think it's nice to be able to observe it, sometimes criticize it or laugh at it, whatever your thoughts are. Sir, I've already spoken.
Just after you telling that story, something from my own childhood came back to me that had to do with your encouragement of your children to go play out traffic. I thought that you didn't like this.
What did you say? I didn't hear you.
That you encouraged your children to go out and play in traffic. I just didn't realize.
Yeah, but they didn't. They all survived. All survived.
They never did what you wanted.
That's right. That's right. So it's wonderful speaking here. I don't want to keep you from your bed.
I was telling somebody who does live on your street that, about that I was coming here tonight. And they said, well, there was an interesting story about the family that your table held seats for 10.
Oh, yes, that's true. My wife was a fantastic woman. She had to be to put up with all those kids. But we had now 11 in the family, counting us as parents. And I noticed, I didn't know that she did this, but she had at the table room for 10, not for 11, but 10. And I said, Jeannie, what are you doing? The kids are starting to complain. And she said, look, when I tell them dinner is ready, they're going to race to that table because one of them is going to be without a seat. And that's what she did. And it just shows you that necessity breeds solutions. It really is something. But it's great talking to all of you. I don't know most of you. I see my psychologist is here. Or are you my psychiatrist? I don't know.
Psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist. Thank you for coming, Doctor. Appreciate it. I have reformed.
Question over there.
Judge Boyle, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but.
No, I don't want to, sir.
I wonder how old you are, because what you told us about World War II would make you about 95, and I can't believe it.
No, I'm going to be 93. I went in the National Guard I lied to my age at 16. I went to I was 17 when I was in Europe, and I looked like a 14-year-old. I would look very young at the time, but I was inducted before Harry Truman signed off that, what was they call that period of time where you were entitled to all the veteran benefits if you signed up and enlisted in the armed services prior to a certain date, and that particular date, all difference in the world. If you got in one day, you got all the GI benefits. If you went a day later, it was all over, you got nothing. So I induced all my friends, the whole bunch of us all joined the service because we wanted to get the GI Bill. That was one of the great creative passages by the Congress of the United States. You know, we knock them all the time. That's part of our fun. But that was one of the greatest amount, and it's bipartisan. So we're not involved with Democrats or Republicans. But that was a fantastic one. And I asked a friend of mine who was a congressman at the time to try to emulate that on a civil side. There's a lot of poor kids that are out there who get in trouble. And one of the reasons they get in trouble is poverty. You know, the great minds are saying, what really causes these things? One of the chief causes is poverty, or the fact that they might not have parents, only one parent living with them, or they may not even know who their parents are. There's something to correct that, and it's not more police. What it is to try to conduct it on a federal basis. And you could do it if you wanted to. You might do it a little bit different, that you just don't hand it out to any Tom, Dick, or Harry. Maybe you have a test to find out how much this person is worth mentally. And maybe the next person who discovers a solution to the various cancers that might be some kid who's out of the barrio or out of some rundown neighborhood who happens to be brilliant and might very well be the best thing that ever happened, but we're never going to know. In fact, in many cases, he's smart enough, and he knows where the money is, and he ends up running some drug gang somewhere. I mean, these are not necessarily dumb people that commit these crimes. These are pretty smart people. And I'm not suggesting that we give it to someone just because they're poor or just because we're trying to solve a problem. But it's there, and the Congress of the United States, here I am pushing it, should really have done something like the GI Bill, which you realize, I said to myself, I did well financially. And I said to myself, you know, I've forgotten how much I found out that it cost the government to give me the GI Bill. I don't remember. But I can tell you, in my taxes, in 1 or 2 years, I paid that all back. That was the best investment that the United States government ever made. Not because of me personally, but because of the system that worked. And so you create taxpayers, earners, that you can tax their income and get back. And remember, that's for your life. The rest of your life, you're going to pay taxes. And so it just seems to me so obvious and evident. See, I'm getting involved in politics. I shouldn't.
Thank you, Will.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll give you
What time do you have to be back at the home?
Nothing